Okay.
Let's get started.
Yeah.
And welcome to so many friends from all over India, old friends and new friends, old friends and young friends. And we're delighted today to be able to have Nayaswamis Jyotish and Devi, the spiritual directors of Ananda Worldwide, and certainly my dear friends since I first came to Ananda in 1972. They were among the first friends that I made there. And every month now, Jyotishji and Deviji have been sharing their love and their wisdom with devotees in India on Sunday mornings like this. And we're delighted to have them again. And this morning, the topic that they chose is how to have more joy in our daily life. And I'm going to ask them to lead us in a prayer and then say a few words on this topic. And then a number of you have already asked questions. This will be a informal conversation format. And hopefully we'll work with some of these questions. And then if there's time, we'll also have some questions live as well. And so Jyotishji and Deviji, please share with us whatever you would like.
Okay, we'll start with the prayer. And please just follow along mentally. It's a little hard with back and forth. So, Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, great masters, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, beloved Guru, Paramahansa Yoganandaji, saints of all religions, we humbly bow to you all. O great masters, bless us and guide us so that we might reunite with God, with our own self, and in that union, feel the bliss of our own selves. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Well, as Keshava has said, tonight we'll explore together the topic of how to have more joy in your life. And let me start by making a point here that might sound like it's a little bit nitpicking, but I think it's important. There's a difference between joy and happiness. Joy is an innate quality of ourselves. In Adi Shankara described God as Satchidanandam, existence, awareness, and bliss. And Master Yoganandaji amended that to say Satchidanandam should really mean existence, consciousness, and ever new, ever expanding bliss, because he didn't want that bliss aspect to seem like it was static. Now, when God creates the universe, he always does that. Only way he can do that is by taking the unity of his own being and creating through the pattern of duality, through the vibration of Om, this universe that we find ourselves in, on the physical plane especially, is a universe of duality. The very structure of the atom has a positive and negative charge to it, electrical charge. That's what allows there to seem to be space. And everything in this world is based on duality. And so is happiness and sadness. That is a duality. But bliss has no duality to it. Bliss is a singularity that is part of our own eternal being. And so to really have joy, we need to get into that eternal aspect of ourselves. On the other hand, the closer we come to that, the more expansive our consciousness is, the more we experience, even though we may not hold it all the time, we experience joy, and the more we are able to control happiness, which is dependent upon our reactive process. But especially toward the latter part of his life, we would sometimes, because Swami Kriyananda became quite hard of hearing, and he had hearing aids, but often if he was alone, he would take them out because it was more comfortable. So we would sometimes come to his apartment and he wouldn't hear us enter. And he was often in the latter part of his life, just kind of would lean back in his chair and he would just have this blissful look on his face. And then he would see us and he would, greet us and be completely present. But occasionally he would say, I feel so much bliss, I can hardly stand it. Now that is true bliss. That's because his soul was very close to the infinite, very close to that state of self-realization. But for most of us, while we're working toward that, and we should try to get to that true connection of our soul with the infinite, nonetheless, most of us are in this world of duality, and therefore we have relatively happiness and unhappiness. And that, however, we can learn to control our reactive processes. And I think most of the things we'll talk about tonight are how to control the reactive process and to be happy all the time. But that also, happiness is a kind of an echo of the innate joyful state that resides within each of us.
Thank you, Jyotish. I'll also share a few words. As we kind of thought more about this topic, which we chose, how to bring more joy into your daily life, I began thinking, that's really a contradiction in terms. You can't bring more joy into your daily life because daily life, as Jyotish was saying, is not real. It's based on a mirage of light and shadow. So if we're trying to find joy in and of itself in our daily life, we will always be disappointed. It will never be there. And so the trick really is to find through meditation. And we've been practicing meditation for most of our adult life. And at first, I want to share with you, because some of you have been meditating for a number of years, some more just beginning. Master said that at first you don't experience joy or bliss in meditation. The first step that you experience is peace. But you will, if you continue with meditation, you will begin feeling as you sit to meditate, you feel, oh, this is my time where I can just let go of everything, where I can just forget about what this is going to outcome or that disaster that's already happened, but I can just rest in the peace of my own being. And then little by little, you begin touching the fringes of bliss. And then, but that's the secret. And then to go deeper and deeper into it. And then when you come to your daily life, whatever your problems may be, you're coming from a center of a feeling of peace and bliss. And then whatever happens, it can't touch you. And we need to, and part of that is just to accept whatever comes. Okay, now this is happening, it's good. This is happening, it's bad. But none of this has anything to do with the bliss of the joy of my own self. And that's what you have to remember, that the events of your daily life are just shadows on a wall. Master used to take his disciples to the movies. And during a very exciting part, he would tap them on the shoulder and he'd point up at the beam of light coming from the projection booth. And he would say, it's just all a play of light and shadow. And he experienced that. For us, it's still what we're striving for. But do try to remember that however perfect you put all the pieces in place, it will never hold true. Master said the one thing you can rely on, you can trust about Maya or delusion, is that it will always break its promise. And so all the things that promise, oh, this will be wonderful, and that'll be wonderful, and this wonderful event, and this success, and this so forth, achievement, it's just shadows. And as long as we depend on it, then we'll always be hungry. And I wanted to conclude, and then Diane will begin, and Keshav will begin asking us questions. This was the quote for today from Swamiji's book, Living Wisely, Living Well. It's an inspiration for every day. And when I read this, I thought, oh, this is very appropriate for our talk today. So Swamiji writes, always affirm, as my guru taught, what comes of itself, let it come. After every disaster, no matter how great, life goes on. If not in this world, then in some other. And this is the important thing, an attitude of relaxed acceptance towards whatever happens to you will bring you great inner peace and happiness. So finding the peace first and bliss within yourself, and then relaxed and accepting whatever comes, and to realize that your point of reference, no matter what comes, to accept it, yes, but your point of reference needs to always be the bliss of your own self. So those are just some kind of a little overview. And now Keshav and I people submitted some very, very fine discussion conversation points, so we can begin with those.
Very good. Thank you both. You've stated very clearly how joy is the final goal. It's the ultimate ideal, Satchidananda, but there are steps. There are practical steps, just like there are steps that attitudes or actions that bring us into conflict, that bring us into unhappiness. Likewise, there are steps, attitudes, and actions that bring us towards more happiness and towards more joy. Let's take an extreme example, which unfortunately a number of our friends have experienced of late, and that is how to have joy when we're grieving for a loved one, that you miss that person, and perhaps fears of the unknown come up. How can you transcend this? This was a question from one of the devotees.
Well, yes, this is a very pertinent question at this point. Many of us in recent months have lost family members or loved ones, people that we're very close to. Devi and I have. And the question of how to feel uplifted even in the midst of grieving, I would say is better than to ask, how can we avoid grieving? I think it's right and good to grieve for loved ones lost. Certainly Master set that example when his mother died, and he grieved very deeply. Of course, he was still a teenager, not even a teenager at the time, but just about to become a teenager. But nonetheless, he wouldn't have put that episode in the autobiography and his reaction to it unless he wanted to tell us, in fact, that it is okay and a natural human instinct to grieve for people who we've lost. So basically what I'm saying here is don't suppress the feeling of sadness that you have lost somebody. It will just prolong the loss. And I've known people who are grieving years and years later because they haven't allowed themselves to really process. Devi and I, this is a different scenario, but an example. We lost our house in a fire, as many of you know. We lost all of our possessions. And Devi relates that she was, well, why don't you tell the story?
Okay, yeah, for a few days afterwards, I was sort of in a state of shock. I just couldn't get grounded again. And then I realized I had to take control. And like, if you lose someone, there's just so many ramifications. It's hard to absorb it. But in this case, with us losing all of our possessions, I took a couple of hours and I just went off by myself. And I thought about every single thing. This, you may think I'm a fool, but every spoon, every plate, every bowl, every pot, every flower, everything we owned. I thought about each thing and I gave it to Master. And at the end of that period, I was totally free and I could just go forward and it was done. And so the point Jyotish is making.
The point that I'm making is to do a process similar to that. If we lose a friend, don't say, oh, I don't feel anything. Oh, I'm not sad. But rather think of all the wonderful things about that friend. And as you think of them, give them to God and release them. Because even though the relationship was very close, our teachings are so clear that friend isn't dead. The death that we see is simply because that friend has passed out of the physical body. But honestly, it's we left here on this earth plane who have more to struggle with. Assuming the friend was high-minded, they'll be in a nice astral plane, much, much more happy and blissful than here. But coming back to how do we deal with that? First of all, accept your loss. Secondly, let go of it by giving it to God, even down to the details of it. And then third and most important, realize that on the plane of Maya, you have lost somebody, but in infinity, you've never had that person, nor have you lost them any more than because we're all connected. And so the more you can go deeper in meditation or deeper in a relationship with the guru, you'll begin to feel a kind of a vibration of joy that is deeper than the reactive process. And if you can feel that in meditation and hold on to it, then yes, you'll still be grieving, but it'll be like the surface waves on a deep sea, and under those surface waves is calmness and joy.
I'll just share personally, about 2 years ago, I lost a very dear friend. She was struggling with cancer. And we had been friends from childhood, from really about 8 years old. And even though we lived far apart and did different things, there was a very deep soul connection there. And when she passed, she was in her 70s, I felt a tremendous loss. And it was a little bit of sadness in my heart. But then I just tried to, she was a very pure, very, very good person, always giving to other people. And then I began looking in Master's eyes and saying, I miss my friend. And then I began looking more deeply in Master's eyes. And I saw my friend's eyes. And I thought, it was you all along, wasn't it? You were my friend. I thought it was that form, but it was you coming as my friend. Just as Divine Mother appeared to Master after and said, I've come to you in many, many eyes, in many, many mothers, but it was always the Divine Mother. And so if you lose a friend, a spouse, a child, a parent, try to really offer that person to God and realize that it was God coming to you through that form. And in the end, that's all it really is. It's just God in all the forms in our life, in every little bird, in every little flower you see on a tree. Try to see God's presence there and don't cling to it, but just say, thank you for coming as that beautiful mother, as that wonderful father, as that dearest friend. But then that love goes back to God and Guru. And at the end, there's just one relationship, really, and that's the soul with God. And all these forms are just little facets of that one beautiful diamond.
Oh, thank you. That is so helpful. And I sort of have a follow-up question on that. And that is that many of us have aging parents and the relationships are changing. You know, again, it's sort of trying to feel Master, Divine Mother flowing through our parents if they're getting, you know, very less capable, they're getting very negative, they're getting infirm, their perhaps depression starts to pull us down. What can we do about it? How can we even feel joy when we're seeing them deteriorating quickly, or they used to be so strong and energetic and now they're opposite to that? And, you know, we obviously, that relaxed acceptance that you talked about is what Swamiji said. And also, as you talked about, I really loved that, you know, so many people say, I'm just not getting the result that I thought I would get in meditation. But what you said is that just hold, you know, first we can feel peace and hold on to that peace and let it slowly move into a simple joy, and then perhaps a deeper joy. And then only with that can you carry it into these situations. And I see more and more, as I know most of all the people we know, they're very serious about Kriya Yoga, they're very serious about meditation, but somehow it doesn't just necessarily translate into these relationships and into these struggles. And so I guess just they're feeling, you know, people are feeling remorse and worry for their parents, and how can they not be affected?
Well, that's a very good question, because we all are, as we age, and if our parents are still alive, then they, of course, are more aged than we are. And as people age, the energy begins to, I don't want to say shut down, it begins to withdraw from the physical form. And the more a person is identified with their physical form and perhaps the role that they have played in the world, the more identified they are with that, as those things change, then they may lose their enthusiasm, or they may lose their even their kind of day-to-day existence becomes kind of rote. And if we see that in our parents, it's a sad thing to see. Now, if a person has a deep spiritual life, generally speaking, their body ages, but Swami was just as enthusiastic about serving Master when he was a year from his death than he was when he was young. Now, he wasn't able to do as much, and he wasn't able to be as active, but nonetheless, because he had connected more and identified more with his infinite self, that didn't change. But coming back, that's not the case for most of us with our parents. One is that we should accept them going through what they're going through in the way that they're going through it. You know, if they're losing some interest in doing things, we shouldn't necessarily take that as a negative. Again, when we first traveled with Swami, he was eager to go here and go there and see things and be places. And later on in his life, it was like he'd traveled enough, and we could be driving through beautiful scenery and he would have his eyes closed or he would be reading a book. He just wasn't interested in that very much. Now, if we had been sad, oh, he's no longer interested in anything, it would have been a misinterpretation. And so one thing is just to accept the aging process in our parents as a kind of a natural process. And that's being carried on according to what's right for them karmically. Now, it's another thing if they're sad or if they themselves are getting depressed because of the withdrawal of energy. And in that case, we need to do what we can to create a positive environment around them. Make sure that there's perhaps nice music playing, especially if it can be uplifting or spiritual. Be sure that some of the influences in their home, the plants, the various things are uplifting, and that can help some. But I think the main thing is a lot of these things are beyond our control. And if we feel that somehow we're a failure because we can't prevent this, then that's unrealistic.
Yeah, I'm going to give some a response to that on a very practical level. As people age, some people, age without missing a beat. They maintain full mental clarity, full physical function, and then it's just time for them to go and they pass quickly. But for most people, it isn't like that. And we are going to see a decline. And the question that the person asked was her parents were always pillars in her life and now they're declining. Well, what's your conclusion there? It's time for you to be the pillar in their lives and not expect them to be the pillar in your life. It's time for the roles to change. And that's the blessing of it. But also, there's an art to dealing with declining people. We have another dear friend who lives at Ananda Village who was a brilliant woman, just did many marvelous things for Ananda. And now she's developing dementia rather severely. And you can't treat her the way you did. But when we're with her and we try to visit her as often as we can, we just, she'll repeat herself, she'll forget, she'll ask the same questions over and over. You just stay steady. You stay steady with it. And you don't have to be, oh, you used to be different. It's like this is who, on the surface, they are now. Inwardly, they're not changed. And so when you relate to parents who are declining, on some level, hold in your heart the strength of who they are. I was having a conversation with a friend recently whose father died relatively recently, and she said she had a dream about him. And he was just in his full prime and so joyful. And that was his soul nature coming to her. I too, when my father died, I had a very vivid dream about him. And he had been very ill towards the end of his life. And in the dream, he just told me, he said, I'm so happy now. And all that suffering is gone. And he said to me, please call your mother and tell her that how happy I am. And I did. And she accepted it. But so the point I'm making is relate to, on some level, hold the thought of who they were. That will help them as they make the transition. And then finally, pray. This friend I was mentioning who is getting advanced dementia, there's a small circle of us, of her close friends. And without telling her, every morning in our meditation, we pray for her. And the woman who lives with her told us her mood has changed so much since we started these little, we call it, a prayer circle. She doesn't know, we're not publicizing it, but there's about 5 of us who every morning, just individually in our meditation, are praying for her. And our friend said she's so much more calm and joyful since you started doing that for her. So pray for them, pray that they can be filled with light even in this stage. But I think the most important thing is what I said at the beginning. They need to be the pillar of strength now. And that's what God is asking of them.
Thank you so much, Devi. It's a difficult transition for people to make. That it's sort of like, now I need to be the pillar of strength for my parents who have always helped me, and to hold them in the light, to see the highest in them. And also, as you were saying, we can't be responsible for their happiness. We can't be responsible for their joy. We have to work on ours. They have to work out their own karma. And we need to give them the freedom to do that, as you say. Another question.
But before we go on to the next question, I just want to add, I was talking with the mother of a friend of ours who had dementia. And she asked me, where are you from? And I said, oh, I'm from Ananda. And she said, oh, I visited there once. It's very nice. And then she paused. She said, where are you from? And we had that same little loop for about a half an hour. And then at first I was getting a little irritated or restless with it. And then I thought, what difference does it make? You have a conversation with someone and you talk about things. One person says one thing, one person says another thing. So this is just, that's what we're doing. It's just on one topic. And we had a very nice visit. And at the end, she said, no, so nice talking to you. And anyway, just to, it doesn't, you can enjoy it is the point I'm making. It doesn't have to be, oh, how sad she keeps repeating herself.
Speaking of repeating herself, this is a little silly, but it's fun. Many years ago, we had a wood stove, and in order to help light the wood stove, we would keep newspapers and then crumple them up and then light the newspaper, and that would catch the wood on. Well, one time, without noticing, I sat down and I saw a newspaper. I thought, oh, somebody left a newspaper here. And I started reading it, and I was reading the news, and it all seemed quite interesting to me. And then I looked at the date, and it was about 3 years old. But it was the same kind of news, the same. Honestly, I think if you turned on your TV set and they were playing a tape from 3 years ago, you probably, of the news, you probably might not catch it for quite some time, because the world just keeps spinning and spinning and spinning, like what we call a hamster wheel that rotates around. Okay.
And it is for us not to be attached to that, and not to be attached to the way our parents were. That it's all a dream. One question a devotee had was, how can you keep your joy without getting affected by other people? When we're in a joyful state, but then we meet or talk to some people, and that joy that we felt in meditation just seems to get sucked out of us. How can we hold on to that?
Well, it's a trick. It's a little bit like when, for those who tuned in a little earlier, we were playing a recording of Swami chanting Om. Now, if that sound of Om were being played in the background, and then we all of a sudden got busy doing something, but it was still playing softly in the background, that background chant of Om would still be going on. but we wouldn't be tuned into it. We'd be busy. Maybe we'd be upset over this or thinking about that and so on. It's very much the same thing, that joy does not leave us. We leave the awareness of our joy. And so when we try to feel that joy in meditation, one of the things that we should do is try to have a bridge between meditation and activity where we do something that's very simple, that doesn't take a lot of thought and doesn't roil up the mind or the emotions, and hold on to that joy while we're doing that. Perhaps come out of meditation, perhaps if you want to have a cup of tea or something, but as you make that tea, even as you drink it, hold on to that joy, but let there be a bridge before you jump right into the news or right into emails or whatever it is, because if you can train yourself to hold on to the joy in spite of the fact that you're active, and if it's a less rajasic activity or less demanding for the reactive process, it's easier, but you can actually train yourself. And then, just as with that sound of Om, if you just stop for a moment, immediately you can hear the sound of Om. But if you don't, let's say, leave that recording going, then you can forget that the sound of Om is there. So feel the joy, build a bridge, and then tap into it as often as you can remember to. Just stop for a moment and try to feel your own innate joy. That will help you also be happy, which is what I talked about earlier. Because if you feel joy, then you can translate that in. Happiness is to be able to, happiness comes from having positive upward flowing energy from the reactive process. So you can control the reactive process to have it more upward flowing, and that will bring happiness. But if you also tie into joy, remember that joy, it also helps you control that reactive process.
Yeah, I think that's an important point that Jyotish was making, to really, sometimes we can be in a happy mood and we'll go into work or we'll go visit a relative, whatever it may be. And maybe that person that we encounter is in a terrible mood. And all of a sudden our bubble gets burst. Well, that's not joy. That's just emotional happiness. There's a difference. And that can get burst. But we saw, again, Swami Kriyananda was such a marvelous example of this. Through thick and thin, and Keshava was Swami's secretary for a number of years, and I'm sure you saw this. No matter what was difficulty he had to face, and believe me, he had many in his life, more than most. I think he was doing tapasya for Ananda, for many, many other people. But there was always a part of him, and you see it in his photos, that wasn't touched. I mean, he could be in a hospital bed. He could be around people that were very hostile to him. But there was a part of him that was never pulled down by that, because joy was, he had filled his consciousness with the quality of joy. And it's not to say, there's a very good story we may have told you before, but this is from a biography of Lahiri Mahashaya. And Lahiri, actually, it's not mentioned in autobiography, but he had 5 children. He had 2 sons and 3 daughters. And one of his daughters was, most of his children were married at this time, and one was married and living in her husband's family's home. And she became very, very ill, and critically ill. And Lahiri gave his wife a little vial of oil, and he said, go give this to her and she will recover. And he gave it to his wife, and then he saw her later and he said, did you do that? And he said, well, the husband's family is only wanting to do Western medicine. And so I can't give her the oil. And the daughter died. And that evening, Lahiri would have a satsang every evening at his home in Benares. And his disciples came and said, "Oh, Master, you must be so upset. We don't have to do the satsang tonight." And he said, "No, it's all right. We can have the satsang." And they said, "Well, Master, we're so upset. We can't really be absorbing what you're saying." And then one said, "But Master, I mean, you've just had this great loss. I mean, aren't you feeling anything?" And he said, "My children, I am feeling it much more than you are." But he said, I have trained my mind to be like a slab of marble. And if another slab of marble falls on it, it doesn't leave an impression. Your minds are like soft mud. If a slab of marble, a heavy blow like losing a loved one comes, it leaves a deep impression. And so that's what we're saying. If you, if someone is in negative, be it a family member or work person or friend, whatever, if it leaves an impression on you, then you need to work at making yourself more just imbued, embedded, enveloped in joy. Make it be a stronger part of your own consciousness. Because, my friends, life is always going to test you. You think you're happy, boom, someone's going to come and throw coffee in your face by accident or on purpose. But it's always to say, can you be joyful in this circumstance? Can you be joyful in that circumstance? And, people can ask a million questions. How do you find joy when traffic is stalled? How do you find joy when your car breaks down? How do you find joy when the power goes out? That's life. And our job is to say, my life is in joy in God.
We can go on, but one of the things Devi is implying here is that meditation, and especially Kriya Yoga in our path, helps us to take control, mental control with our will of the movement of energy in the spine. And that movement of energy is also the reactive process. And as we learn to control that through Kriya Yoga, then in negative circumstances, we can also control our reactive process so that we don't allow ourselves to get all entangled in the negativity around us. The more we're able to do that, it's like one of Master's is actually his second most advanced disciple, said that he created a bubble of joy around himself, and he never allowed anyone or anything to penetrate that bubble of joy. And one day he had a small community, not unlike Ananda. And one day several of the buildings burned, and he went to his house for a few hours and meditated. And then he came back, and at dinner, it was as if nothing had happened. And somebody asked him about it. And he said, well, for a few hours, I let my bubble of joy be diminished, but I went home and I meditated, and now I've recreated that bubble of joy, and nothing can get in. So you can be in bad circumstances. You can actually paradoxically be unhappy and joyful at the same time, meaning that you can be tuned into that sound of Om, that deeper vibration of joy, and the reactive process can be moving in a downward direction at the same time. So it's a little bit paradoxical, but it's one of the realities of life. So the more we can control the reactive process, the more we can choose to be happy, no matter what is around us.
I mean, this is so key to what we're talking about. And some of you may have heard this story, but another true incident from our time with Swami Kriyananda, once we were driving with him There's a nearby area where people can go skiing. It's about an hour and a half from Ananda Village called Lake Tahoe. And there were a few of us driving in the car. And Swami at that time was driving the car. And the rest of us were riding in the car. And we were going towards this ski area to spend the weekend skiing. Swami loved to ski as a young boy and as a young man. And so as we were going up the mountain pass, it started snowing quite heavily, and the snow was coming down harder and harder. And then they were putting up the signs saying, pull over, put on chains. And so Swami started to pull over to put on chains, but unbeknownst to him, the tires on the car were bald. They didn't have a tread, and the car went into a terrific spin. And we were just spinning out of control. And cars were coming the other way, and it was getting dark and it was snowing. It was quite a scene. And we were spinning and spinning. And then finally we crashed into this big bus that was parked alongside the road that had pulled over. Luckily, no one was hurt in the car, but the car was pretty much totaled. And Swami said, first thing was, is everyone okay? And we said, yes. And he got out and he looked at the bus that we had crashed into, and he said, look, that's going to the ski area that we wanted to go to. Let's get our bags and go. And so we all piled on, that we got our bags out. We called the tow service to take the car. And we got on the bus, and everyone on the bus who had seen what happened said, oh, what a pity, your whole vacation is ruined. And Swami said, you know, I would feel fine about it in a week. Why waste a week? Let's go and have a nice ski weekend. And we did. And, you know, and everything worked out fine. And it just is such a good example that life is always going to throw you curves, always. We would be foolish not to expect that. But it's up to us how we respond.
Thank you. I often bring to mind Sister Gyanamata's words, change no circumstance in my life, change me.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And these things
Yeah.
come to us for a divine purpose.
And, you know, also to take it a little deeper, change is more than just a mental affirmation. It's actually a change of the energy patterns in our brain, which Nayaswamis Jyotish was saying, through the practice of Kriya Yoga.
It was amazing what you were saying about also how we can have a reaction. Our reactive process can be going on, but that joy, that bubble of joy can still be there. I equate that also to meditation, where the thoughts can be going by, and if we're focusing on the thoughts, we can think, what a restless meditation. And yet if you just focus on the peace that's underneath it, suddenly it's like, no, this is a very peaceful meditation. And I had the experience of my younger brother passing away many, many years ago. And of course, on the material side of things, it was very tragic and sad. And yet it's as if the grace of Master, he was there because I needed him so much, that I could feel him so tangibly, that it also brought joy into that experience. So if I focused on the joy of the experience of being able to feel Master's presence, then, you know, you could also see the what was going on the physical plane was very difficult, but it was both at the same time. And that just also led me to the next thing. Swami wrote, you know, the way of the Ananda Sangis. And the first, you know, just sort of how you started out this morning, Jyotish, talking about it, but it says man's highest duty is to express himself as manifestation of Satchidananda. And so I think if we use it as a duty, whether we're talking about Kriya or Seva, or, you know, just how people tend to think other things are their duty. And how can you maybe speak about how this is by far our highest duty, is to realize that joy?
You know, our moods or our bhav, Master said that our thoughts are actual things, just like electricity. There's actual energy in our thoughts. And it's just like electricity or magnetism, our thoughts go out and they create a kind of a magnetic aura around us. And so you wouldn't go into, let's say, the office and wear clothes that were stinky and dirty and messy and kind of throw dirty water on everyone. People would feel that that was an unfair way to treat them. Well, why throw messy, dirty thoughts or nasty, negative thoughts on everyone? Why put out a vibration, an aura that is dark? It's our duty to try to bring light into the world. And the wonderful thing is, the more we do try to bring light or goodness or joy, Yogananda said we should shoot people with the buckshot of our smiles, meaning it's quite an image, isn't it? That we should be proactively reaching out and helping lift up the moods and the vibration wherever we are. That is our duty. And as the more we realize that we're children of light, the more we have the duty to spread that light as much as we can, not in an artificial way, but just in a very real being present, caring about people, being a friend, being in seeing the positive in situations. All of these bring an aura, a magnetism, and that magnetism lifts up everybody who's around us. So when we're in a tense situation or with negative people, the tendency is to allow their negativity to pull us into an equally negative reaction. But if we can turn the tails and shoot them with the vibration of our positivity, if that's strong enough, it will break their negativity. But it takes a inner strength and active emanation of light and of positive thoughts and of connecting with a sense of your connection with higher consciousness. If you can hold on to that, then you will turn the tables on negative people, because we're always exchanging magnetic vibrations.
You know, people often ask us, especially in India where the family unit is so strong, I'd like to meditate, I'd like to have more time for my sadhana, but I have all these family demands. Well, I just want to help people to understand that meditation, it doesn't really matter. I mean, if you have more time, the more the better, no doubt. But if you don't have a lot of time, try to think of meditation as a period of heightened, focused awareness, where you are fully present in your body, in your mind, and in your soul nature. And even if it's for 5 minutes, that strengthens your physical, mental, and astral beings. And then when you go about your daily life, there's a strength that you bring. So you don't have to, you don't tense into meditation, you relax into your own self with heightened awareness. Relax into your own self with heightened awareness. And however long you have to meditate, that's how long you have. The more, the better, but people's lives are busy. But if you have that heightened awareness, then you bring that into your daily life. And you see someone coming towards you, and you can see a dark energy around them, and maybe you go in the other room, or maybe you just do what you can to deflect it. But heightened awareness helps you to deal with all the different aspects of life. You can't change them. They're going to come, but you can deal with them so that it doesn't affect you and change your energy patterns. So really for everyone, Master's path, his techniques are just, we can't say enough how much they help people. We got a letter, many of you knew or know Sagar, who had been in Mumbai. He lives at Ananda Village now, is one of our main online teachers. And he forwarded a letter to us from one of his online meditation students, who was a man. He said, for 20 years, I've had migraine headaches. I have tried everything, every doctor, every medication, acupuncture, homeopathy, everything. He said, I just had to live with these migraines. He said, in 4 weeks after I started meditating, these migraines after 20 years are gone, because I'm learning finally how to relax and de-stress. So no matter how busy you are, my friends, really don't skip your meditation. Give it the best energy you have in whatever time period you have for it.
And quality is more important than quantity.
Yes.
But of course, quality and quantity are the best of all. But even if you can only meditate for 5 or 10 minutes, don't miss it. It'll be a great reset button for your joy level.
There's one aspect of this question about challenges that come to us, and that is of anxiety, of sort of, with COVID, with bad news, with not knowing. It's like the challenges are shifting, and it is natural that this creates a certain uncertainty and anxiety. And do you have any words to share on that aspect?
Well, Master said that we should periodically go on a worry fast, meaning that we just don't, when you go on a food fast, you don't eat. When you go on a worry fast, you just refuse to worry for a little while. Also, when you go on a food fast, you don't try to go into a restaurant and just sit around and say, oh, I'm fasting, I'm fasting. You remove yourself. So if you're going on a worry fast, the first thing to do is remove yourself from the sources of your worry. If it's news items about COVID and illness and whatever it is, stop watching news for a day. Just try it. Try it one time. And just don't let your mind go constantly to, oh, what if this happens? What if that? That too is a habit of letting your mind visit the what ifs. The second thing I would say is withdraw as much as possible from those things over which you have almost no control whatsoever. You're not going to change the politics of India. So why worry about the politics of India? You're not going to change the way that politicians or others in power, perhaps even your boss at work, how they act. So why worry about how they act? You have enough trouble trying to control the way you act and the way you react. So pull back from those, especially worrying and anxiety over those things over which you have no control at all. Just remove yourself from them. And if you do that, then you won't be constantly stimulated with new things to worry about.
And I'll add, we were going through a period in the last couple of weeks here at Ananda Village where things kept going, shall we say, from bad to worse. First of all, we're in a tremendous drought. So the earth is very parched. We haven't had enough rain. I know in different places, Germany and China and Mumbai, there's flooding, but here we haven't had rain. And then there's, fires and not imminently coming to us, but they're in different parts of California. The air is very, very smoky because of all the fires, even though they're not nearby. And I began thinking, gosh, it's all the chakras, the earth chakra, which is our security. It's all parched and dry. The next chakra, the water chakra, there's either too much water or not enough water. It's out of balance. Then we come to the fire chakra, and if there's fires all over the place. And then we come to the air chakra, and that's all smoky and polluted. Then we come to the ether chakra, and that's all the negative thoughts in the internet. And I thought, my God, what chance do we have? All of the elements are all out of balance. And then I thought, we can chant Om with the chakras. We can feel each chakra and just chant Om there and release the energy, balance the energy. And that will, maybe it'll affect the outer world, but it will certainly affect our inner world. So really, I think it's worth doing, because each of the chakras represents an element, a quality, fear, power, control, and then the higher chakras, love and expansion and bliss. And so bring the energy up from the lower chakras, chant Om there, release the energy, bring it to the higher chakras. If you have the higher Kriya techniques, that do them now, because they work with the chakras and with the energy of the chakras. So, there are outward tools and inward tools. And now we really need to use both, because Master has given us every possible, from, subtle techniques of energy, Kriya yoga, to attitudes, to, as Jyotish was talking about, shooting the world with the buckshot of our joy and so forth, to very, very practical things, simple but practical, doable things. So we need to understand that we are in control of our lives. We make the world around us with our own attitudes, and we can be just a victim of life and like a little piece of wood drifting on floodwaters, or we can be a mighty tree, a mighty oak that stands firm no matter what happens around us. That's what we need to be. And ultimately, as Master said, as you know what I'm going to say, probably, the yogi should be able to stand unshaken amidst the break of crashing worlds. And my friends, it looks like we're in the middle of crashing worlds right now. But as yogis, we must stand unshaken.
Oh, well, you have helped us to stand unshaken and inspired us so much and giving us so many practical things to do, as well as very deep things to think about, and ways that we are the masters of our destiny. Just like you said, we are not victims of our circumstance. And if we move forward with joy, and this bubble of joy, and this strength of aura, magnetism, we will be good soldiers for Master and just bring that joy around the world. Thank you, Nayaswamis Jyotish and Devi, for your love, for your leadership, for your example, everything you give to all of us every day.
Well, thank you, Dai and Keshav, and thank you to all of our friends from throughout India for joining us. It's the friendships that we have with many of you. We don't know all of you, but many of you whose pictures we see, photos we see on the screen. These are deep soul friendships, and we are very grateful for getting to share this lifetime together with all of you. So God bless you.
God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining.
And so we'll see you next
Thank you
month,
all.
Jyotish and Devi. We'll see you next month at
Very,
one of
very
our
good.
centers.
Yeah, we enjoy doing these satsangs. It gives us a chance to be with our friends in India.
Yeah.
God
We're
bless you.
so grateful. Thank you.